Hey everybody, Todd Vandermeid back for another edition of Freedom Steel. So we are a few days post the Cargill ruling on bump stocks from the Supreme Court. The left has their underwear in a knot, and so let's get to it right after this. Hey everybody, welcome back again. Todd Vandermeid, former NRA contract lobbyist, Illinois gun law guru, sometimes called the Gun Santa. And so here we are, taking a few days to digest the Cargill ruling and look it over. And so I want to give you some of my thoughts. We were the first ones out there with what the Cargill rulings meant because we were doing a live broadcast on what was coming down from the court. And I will be doing a live broadcast again tomorrow morning. All things considered, I have a couple of errands that I have to run first thing in the morning, so it'll be a race to get back to the computer by 8:45 so we can capture those. But we will be going live tomorrow morning, and depending on what we get tomorrow, possibly Friday morning as well. So with that, let's talk about what we've got here. This is huge, and the biggest reason I think this is important is because this takes on the administrative state. Now, we are all waiting on the two Chevron cases to come down to find out whether or not Chevron deference is going to be allowed to continue, or if that doctrine is finally going to go into the dustbin of history. But what was interesting in this case is that ATF themselves went out of their way to not invoke the Chevron deference doctrine within this case. No, they stayed away from it. In this decision, you do not see the word Chevron once at all. I think ATF did not want to be part and parcel the reason that Chevron deference got knocked off. And so they just didn't even mention it. And so in that, they got into what is the rule of lenity, because the thing here is the dissent and the majority opinion show that there are two competing readings of the statutory language. And that's all this decision was. This decision is what they do day in and day out. They read and articulate what the statute means. There were bankruptcy cases last week. They decided what the statute meant when it came to certain terms within the bankruptcy code. And so here, this is nothing more than the court making a statutory interpretation so everybody is clear what is or what is not a machine gun under the act. And the left is losing their shit. They are going absolutely bananas about this. And they're getting it wrong. They just aren't. So the fact that you have a dissent that says something 180 degrees from what the majority opinion shows that there can be more than one reading of the statute. Now, the left wants to turn everything into a machine gun, and here the majority says, look, there are very specific meanings of what the statute says and qualifies as a machine gun, and everything's centered around single function of the trigger. I thought they did a poor job at the oral arguments on our side getting out the forward pressure that needed to be applied to make the bump stock work. My argument has been, continues to be, that if you took a bump stock, put it in the crux of your arm, pointed in the air, and pulled the trigger, you would get one shot. If you took that rifle with a bump stock, laid it down on a sandbag, on a bench, and you sat there and you held it like this, you flipped the selector switch from safe to fire, and you pulled the trigger, then held the trigger, you would get one shot. You can bump fire any semi-auto, by hooking your finger through a belt loop, getting the right amount of tension there, and then pushing forward on the stock and letting it rock back and forth. There's a video out there of a guy doing a clip dump on an M1 Garand. Yes, I said clip because it is the appropriate term for an M1 Garand. So you got that. But this ruling is going to reverberate because most of the ATF statutes do not fall under Chevron because they have criminal penalties. And as such, with having criminal penalties, Chevron is not supposed to apply. So that's where we get into the rule of lenity. And it means that if there's multiple readings on this, then tie's supposed to go to the runner because you have a criminal statute, a person facing criminal fines and or penalties, time in jail, and in this case 5 to 10 years in jail most likely. So with that, so this was black letter law construction, and I think there's some good things in here. So one, this is really going to put the nail in the coffin on the other three ATF rules that we now have out there. We have Vanderstock, which I believe is the pistol brace case. We have Mock v. Garland, or I'm sorry, Vanderstock is frames and receivers. Mock v. Garland is pistol braces. They sound similar, so I kind of get them confused. And then you have the new engaged in the business one brought to us by turncoat Republicans who made a deal with the devil. So you've got the pistol brace rule, frame and receiver rule, you've got the engaged in the business rule. You've got all three of these rules that all rely on ATF statutory interpretations. The engaged in the business rule has caught a lot of publicity because of this takedown of this guy down in Arkansas. You've got the pistol brace rule, which they've ruled and put an order of vacatur on it because they're like, nope. I think that's going to have some other play for us on right to repair. And then you've got the frame and receivers. Again, they're backing up against a statutory definition. And if the left is losing their minds on this one, wait till they have to the Supreme Court rules that the frame or receiver definition is outdated just like this one, or that their rule does not comply, and that's not the court's problem, that's ATF's problem. And as Justice Alito alluded to, if you want to fix it, there's a remedy for Congress. That is the appropriate remedy. Congress can write a new law to change the definitions. That'll be a subject of another video because our mantra should be to, we get screwed when the Republicans get weak in the knees. So we need to hold at least one of the houses, preferably take back the Senate, take back the office of the president, and then turn around and just push all this stuff into the dustbin of history. However, so along with this, you've got the separation of powers. As Justice Alito said, you want a remedy, Congress can amend the law. It's even mentioned in the decision here that the NFA that has been adjusted a couple of times, and in those 2 times, not once did Congress adjust the definition of a machine gun. So what do we got here? What we have, so in the first holding right here at the top, it's held a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock is not a machine gun as defined by 5845B because it cannot fire more than one shot by a single function of a trigger. And even if it could, it would not do so automatically. So there's 2 parts of what Justice Thomas was, single function of the trigger, and does it do it automatically? Hence my descriptions of how a bump stock would act if you held it straight up or put it on a bench and simply pulled the trigger. Without the forward pressure, nothing else happens. Those are 2 independent manual inputs that have to go in order to make it act like that. They go on that a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock does not fire more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. This is important because of the Seventh Circuit ruling. I think this throws a ton of cold water on what they were trying to espouse. So let's jump back over to the ruling in the Naperville case and the Southern Illinois cases by the three-judge panel. They closed out in this, said, based on the record before us, we are not persuaded that the AR-15 is materially different from the M16. Heller informs us that the latter weapon is not protected by the Second Amendment and therefore may be regulated or banned because it is indistinguishable from that machine gun. The AR-15 may be treated in the same manner without offending the Second Amendment. That's not what they just said in the Cargill case. Because if we flick back over to Cargill, they said a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock is not a machine gun. If a firearm, an AR-15 equipped with a bump stock, is not a machine gun, how can a gun without a bump stock be closer to a machine gun? I don't think it can. You know, a semi-automatic rifle equipped with a bump stock does not fire more than one shot by a single function of trigger. The phrase function of the trigger refers to the mode of action. No one disputes that a semi-automatic rifle without a bump stock is not a machine gun because the shooter must release and reset the trigger between every shot. That might be news to Judge Easterbrook, but it gets better for us because as we scroll down here, moreover, a semi-automatic rifle with a bump stock is indistinguishable from an Ithaca Model 37 shotgun, a weapon the ATF concedes cannot fire multiple shots automatically. What's that word again? Indistinguishable from a Model 37, a pump action shotgun. What they're getting at here is that a Model 37, like some other shotguns, will slam fire. You can shoot it. You hold the trigger to the rear, you work the action manually, and when you drive the pump handguard forward, you will run the shell in and the hammer will follow and it will slam fire. It's a term called slam fire. As you slam the shell into the chamber, it will automatically, fire, not by an automatic function of the gun, just because the hammer will fall and follow the bolt and it will fire the second that round is in the chamber and seated. So therefore, while Judge Easterbrook and Judge Wood say that these are indistinguishable from a machine gun, the Supreme Court has just said the opposite. Huge, absolutely huge. Earlier in the Naperville, if the AR-15 by itself is not a machine gun because it only fires at the rate of 300 rounds per minute, and the auto sear is also not a machine gun because it's just a component that holds a hammer in the cock position. That would be a roadmap for assembling machine guns and avoiding legitimate regulations of their private use and carry. This is what Judge Alito was getting to. You don't like the definition? Change the definition. But the black letter of the definition says it is not a machine gun. This is where we get our 2A holdings out of this. Even though this was not a Second Amendment case, it was a case about guns, but it was not a case about the Second Amendment. And because of that, I think Justice Thomas squarely put some things in there to give Justice Easterbrook and the Seventh Circuit and the Fourth Circuit something to chew on as they deal with this. So we're going to be going back down to the lower court for trial. And I think Judge McGlynn is going to have a lot to say. There's going to be some very interesting arguments to see how the state wants to try and get around this. There's some other stuff going on. I mean, Justice Thomas went in there, used illustrations from the FPC amici brief. They used an animation from there. The left is losing their mind about this. And like I said, we will go on and talk about that more But the point here is, one, this wasn't very different from dozens, if not hundreds, of other rulings where they are doing statutory interpretation, because there are two different sides to how the statute reads and what they think it says. The government says it reads one way. Plaintiffs on our side would say, no, you can't shoehorn this into there, which means you don't have the power to change the definition because you are outside. So this deals with separation of powers. This deals with Congress writing laws, not administrative agencies. This has some implications for future administrative rules, and it sits there. That's why they're freaking out. They're freaking out because their whole I have a phone and a pen gun control scheme through the executive branch just got nailed to a cross. This is not going to fly. I predict that the other three administrative rules will meet a similar fate. They will lose. It'll be very interesting to see how Vanderstock is argued and what comes out of that, but I think it's going to be very short. I'm actually surprised they took Vanderstock instead of sitting there issuing this and then doing a GVR. But we've got Rahimi pending out there. That's the next big gun case. We'll see what comes out of that. I'll be doing a live announcement as the court hands down their opinions tomorrow morning. We'll see if we get Rahimi this week or not, and we'll see what that leads for us. I'll have some predictions on that coming forward. Facially, I think Rahimi loses. I think the Fifth Circuit is overturned on the facial ruling that it was unconstitutional. However, and I think Mr. Rahimi as an individual loses, but I think there will be a lot of good in there for us to hopefully squelch red flag laws, civil orders without due process, and the like. I think they will hang their hat on it. Dangerous individuals can be prohibited from owning firearms given the proper due process. But as always, please like, subscribe, throw comments down below, ask questions. Appreciate everybody following through on everything and keeping in touch. We're trying to crank more content out. My days are busy with taking care of the wife. She's getting better, and we just purchased a motorhome. So, with always, guys, stay tuned and frag out.